If you've been watching interest rates for months now, and you're thinking to yourself, we have 7 interest rate cuts in a row, the policy rate for the Bank of Canada is at 2.75, shouldn't the home prices be rising by now? If rates are falling, generally the home prices are on their way up, but we haven't seen that happen. So why are the home prices so stubborn right now? In today's video, we're going to answer that question and a few more questions just like that who have been submitted by people just like you in the comment section down below. These are questions that I get every single week from first-time home buyers, from some move-up buyers, and they are people just trying to really make sense of this whole situation. It's strange, it's not common, especially if you've not been paying attention to real estate for that long. This is a market that a lot of people are just not used to. I'm going to walk you through these 5 questions that I've got here today. I'm going to tell you that question number 4 is the one that I definitely get more frequently than all the rest. Now, before we jump into the video, if you are still trying to decide, should you buy now, should you wait it out, I've actually built out a free home buyers starter pack for you. You can click the pinned comment down below or in the description box and get that information. It includes some budgeting tools, it includes planning checklists, it includes some strategies, and some of the most common buyer pitfalls that we see in the real estate market. Now, question number 1 that I do get is, why haven't the home prices crashed despite the situation that we're in, with the inventory being higher than usual and the interest rates not being at a level where they were during the pandemic or just pre-pandemic for a lot of people? The reality is the inventory itself is still low on the freehold side of things. We don't have as much inventory as it sounds like on the detached, the semi-detached, and the freehold townhouses. There is a ton of condo inventory across the GTA, but the freehold category doesn't have that same amount of inventory. Now, if the inventory picks up on the detached side and the freehold side of things, then we're going to have a situation where buyers can't be as patient as they are right now. Right now, buyers are being extremely patient in today's market, and it might be paying off for them because they're still selling their homes at pretty good prices. We haven't seen the prices really fall off on that side of things. So that is a very, very big reason why we are not actually seeing the prices kind of fall off on the freehold side of things. Now, of course, you can look online. CMHC says that they expect the market to be stable unless there's extreme shock in our economy. Now, we are dealing with an election that's coming soon, the US tariff situation. So there's certain things that are going on. It might be that perfect storm for a potential market crash. We'll have to see if that's something that happens. And of course, my definition and your definition of a market crash might be very, very different. There's a lot of people that we see in the comment section, once again, that are saying they want to see prices drop 50%. I don't see that being realistic at all. If your average detached home is $785, give or take, I don't think you're going to see detached homes under $400,000. That's just not the reality of the situation. If you're hoping for that, you're probably going to be hoping for that forever. If you think maybe there's another 10%, 15% that might come off the top here, that's a lot more realistic. So keep that in mind when you're actually thinking about what a housing crash looks like to you. Now, question number 2 that I have been getting a lot is the housing market still unaffordable for first-time buyers? And the answer here is yes, and arguably more than ever. Your rate that you're getting paid at your job likely has not increased that much. The housing market, we've seen it in the last 10 years, housing prices have doubled, if not more, and the problem that we're seeing here is the housing prices have gone up, and now we're dealing with higher interest rates as well, which means you're going to be spending a massive amount of your actual income on your home, and you're not going to have the rest of that money to enjoy your life, especially if it's a family. You don't want to spend every penny you have on your home. I know my kids, they want to enjoy things. We want to take them places. We want to actually live our life and not be strapped by home affordability. The average home price in Canada right now is $710,000. The average household income is around $95,000 a year. Now, that's a price to income ratio of 7.5 nationally. And in Toronto, it's actually over 10 times. So the rule of thumb used to be, don't spend more than 30% to 35% of your actual income on your housing. But in places like the GTA, we're seeing that's not even possible. We're seeing people spending over 50 to 60% of their actual net income on just the mortgage payments alone. And you know, mortgage payments are not the end of what the costs are when you have a home. There's property tax, there's utilities, there is the upkeep, there is also that emergency fund should you have something like a broken window or a leak. You need to make sure that it makes sense for you to actually get into the housing market. And if you're spending this massive chunk of your net income on it, it might not make sense for you, and that's completely okay. Even though the prices have dipped a little bit since 2022's peak, your monthly payments are actually rising thanks to the higher borrowing costs right now. Even though we've had those rate decreases, they're still higher, and it's actually making it just more difficult all in all for people to afford a house. You have some barriers here. You also have to qualify 2% higher than the actual mortgage rate. You have to afford your groceries, you have to afford your fun, you have to afford everything. It's a lot to really take into account. What are you going to spend 90% of your net income on just house and living? It's not sounding like a great way to live. Now, that's why one of the things we keep hearing right now is the prices don't need to actually rise for affordability to get worse. The rates are already doing that job. The third question that I do get quite often is, are there certain areas that are more vulnerable to prices going up or down, or just in general? And absolutely, yeah, the real estate is a very hyper-local thing. We talk about location, 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 and we want to talk about the big metro areas, the Torontos, the Vancouvers. These big centers are generally unaffordable to most people. You want a detached home in Toronto, north of $1 million. Vancouver, north of $1 million, maybe even north of $1.5 million. But they're also the least likely to actually crash because they do have a lot more interest and there's job markets there. They do get some more of that immigration as well. Whereas if you are talking the outskirts, if you're talking as far out as a Waterloo, a Woodstock on the west, maybe a Bowmanville on the east, there's a lot less draw for people to get out there. So you might see some of the homes on the outskirts start to kind of taper down in terms of their prices. A mid-sized city like Hamilton, a Barrie, a London, they saw some of the bigger price jumps during the pandemic, and those are some of the ones that have actually fallen off the most since 2022 because people have to go back to work and they work in the downtown cores, and maybe they're not doing that remote work like they once were. Some of the most affordable provinces out there are your Alberta, your Saskatchewan, and people from the GTA, they actually move out that way because it's just more affordable. You're going to have lower payments, and your income to home price ratio actually makes sense. Where in the GTA, like we said, 50 to 60% of your net earnings are going to go towards your house in all likelihood, which is just a little too much for most of us to stomach. The fourth question, the most common one, what would actually cause a home crash in the GTA? Question is obviously the most common thing I get because everybody wants to see a home crash, especially if they're not in the real estate market. If you're in the market, you don't really want to see a home crash, but there are some advantages even if you do own a home to the market going a little bit lower than it currently is. A crash would be something where people are forced to sell for prices that maybe they're not super excited about. And the forced selling comes from a couple different things. It could come from the mortgage rates actually being a little bit too high and people having to renew, which we're going to see in the back half of this year and next year, people coming off of a low mortgage rate, having to renew at a high mortgage rate and not being able to make those payments, or having to make a substantial amount more in payments than they currently were. That's going to affect everything. They're going to do less fun. They're going to spend less money on the luxuries that are out there, your vacations, taking your family places. You're really going to be strapped and spending a lot more of your money on just maintaining the mortgage payment and the property. What happens here is people decide, hey, maybe I want to sell this now. Maybe I've got no interest in owning a home. I don't want to live this lifestyle where I'm just making payments and not able to do the things that I actually enjoy. So we might see some forced selling in this sense. Pre-construction condos is another area where the crash can be kind of triggered. We'll say the buyers right now are having a hard time even closing on pre-construction. Of course, they bought it 3 or 4 years ago, rates were lower, prices were higher, and now they're trying to close. It's worth less than what you bought it for. The rates are higher. It's a kind of perfect storm for pre-construction buyers to try to just walk away altogether or assign their contract to a new buyer. And we're seeing, like we have in a previous video that'll be up here, buyers actually being sued by the builders because they're not going through with the contract, they're not following through with the purchase. And of course, the builder can't sell it for the same price that these guys bought it for. But when you sign a contract, you should know what can potentially happen to you, or you might get burned. And unemployment is the last thing that I think is a big factor when it comes to, can the market actually crash? If people start losing their jobs and the economy does weaken, that can be a really big trigger. If you lose your job, how are you going to pay for your mortgage? If you lose your job, how are you going to support your family, pay for the groceries? You might be forced to sell. That might trigger a lot more inventory hitting the market. If that happens, this inventory would build up on the detached freehold side of things, because the condo side, it's already there. If we get that buildup of inventory, all of these sellers right now that have been pretty steady in terms of holding flat on their home values, they're going to be up against the choice of lowering their price to get it sold quicker and kind of beating that rush if we get that inventory on the other side of things. That's what we're seeing right now in the condo market. We're seeing condos having to undercut the other condos to even get their units sold. If that happens with the detached category in the freeholds, then market crash is definitely something that we need to really start to look out for. The last question that I get fairly often here is, what should you be doing right now if you're a buyer? You might be hearing, don't buy, wait for it to hit the bottom. You don't know if this is actually the bottom. So here's what I'm telling my actual clients. Get pre-approved, see what you can actually afford in today's market. Before you do anything else, you might not be able to afford anything in today's market still, which is great. Then you can figure out how much you need to save, what that timeline looks like for you. You might actually be surprised with how much you can afford, and you might want to kind of play the market, see if there's any good deals out there for yourself, or you might really just continue sitting on the sidelines, waiting it out a little bit longer, seeing if this storm does brew, and then jumping in based on what your best guess is. Because if I tell you it's a great time to buy, if I tell you it's a great time to sell, I truly do not know, and nobody else does out there on the internet. We don't know what this market looks like in 3 or 6 or 12 months. We could see prices stay flat for the rest of the year, but we could see prices also continue to drop. I can safely say I don't see the prices going up anytime soon. So if you are going to take that into consideration, think about what makes sense for you making your actual move. If you're a buyer, though, that actually owns a property already, the opportunity is pretty good for you right now. A lot of homes are not getting as many showings and viewings, and they're not getting the offers. So you might be able to sell your current property and buy something that's a little bit bigger, more space. If you have additional family members, maybe you had another kid and your space that you currently have is just not cutting it. Maybe you're in a condo, you got one kid, your second is on the way, 2 kids in a 1-bedroom or a 1+10. Just, it might be too tight for you. It might make sense for you to transact in this market. It might be best for you out of all buyer categories to actually make your move now, then wait for things to go up, because you're going to catch some of the sellers who are really trying to sell those detached properties right now and be able to negotiate with them. Now, I got a bonus question to finish it off here. How is it possible that home prices are not already plummeting? And I think right now they are not plummeting because the sellers that are out there are being very, very patient. I think they are sitting on an interest rate that they are happy with, so they are not trying to fire sale their property. And I think they are trying to hold as much of their equity as possible for maybe their retirement, maybe their move to their next property. But we need to be cautious, because if this inventory does build up, these guys are going to get it right in the behind. They're going to get bit if they try to wait too long to get that extra bit of equity that they're hoping to squeeze from the property. Now, if the property value goes up, of course, they win the situation here. So we'll have to see where the cards fall. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you do like this kind of video and you find it helpful, drop some more questions in the comment section down below. We'll do another Q&A next month. Of course, if you're a first-time home buyer, download that free guide that I've built out for you, that home buyer starter pack. If you have any questions, you can always text me at the number here on the screen as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.